Hello, welcome to Older and Loving It, a program designed to address legal and life planning concerns of seniors and their families. My name is Kathleen Summers. I'm an elder law and estate planning attorney with Summers and Associated, located in Acton, Massachusetts. Depression in an elderly person is often overlooked as a treatable medical problem and considered a normal part of growing older. Loss of loved ones, retirement, and health problems are things that cause sadness in older adults. However, if these feelings linger for an extended period of time and affect a person's quality of life, he or she may be suffering from depression. When an elderly person drops out of society and becomes reclusive, many people just assume that's what old people do. What might seem like normal behavior to the uninitiated is a cry for help. The good news is that clinical depression can often be conquered through medical treatment. By combining talk therapy, social therapy, and pharmaceutical treatments, many depressed individuals get relief from their symptoms. We are fortunate to have Michael Landers, a psychotherapist and partner at Concord Insight Partners, located in Concord, Massachusetts. Michael works with many seniors and families, and he helps his clients with the full range of mental health issues and specializes in relationship therapy. Welcome, Michael. Why don't we begin by talking about what depression is? Can you give us a definition?
Yes, depression is a mental health condition, formally called a mood disorder, that affects our feelings, our ability to think clearly and make good decisions, and our ability to use our bodies and to speak clearly. You might hear someone say, well, yesterday I felt pretty good, but today I'm depressed, or I'm a little depressed, and maybe I'll feel better tomorrow. That's not really what we're talking about. That's more of just kind of a low day or a bad day. Mm-hmm. But we're talking here about clinical depression, which is more serious than that.
Are there different types of depression?
There are, and maybe the best way to explain that is to talk about the symptoms. So there are nine symptoms that define clinical depression, and they start with a lack of enjoyment in things that you used to like to do. Like if you had hobbies, for example, you used to like to garden, or you like to go to movies or play golf, things like that have interested you for a long time, you just don't have the energy for anymore. You don't take any enjoyment in anymore. A very, very common symptom of depression. Sadness is another one, although sadness by itself is not enough to define depression. It is one of the symptoms. Low energy and fatigue, slowed physical movements and slowed speech, and then I'd also need to add to that anxiety and agitation, which is kind of the other side of the slowed physical movement. It's kind of the opposite. It's also a symptom. Difficulty concentrating, including some memory problems. Let's see what we have left. 4 left. Feelings of hopelessness, helplessness, a pervasive sense of guilt. That's a symptom. Thinking a lot about death, and especially thinking about suicide, thinking about hurting yourself. Sleep pattern changes. And we're talking here with all these symptoms about changes in your experience and in your behavior. So we're looking for a change in sleep pattern, like you're sleeping more than you used to or a lot less than you used to. And most frequently with depression, people experience some form of insomnia. So they either have trouble getting to sleep, or once they're asleep, they wake up like in the middle of the night or early in the morning and then can't get back to sleep again. Very common symptom. Appetite changes, eating more than you used to or less than you used to, and especially if that's resulting in weight gain or loss. So those are the 9 symptoms. Now, as to the different types of depression, clinically there are 2. One is called major depression or major depressive disorder, and that is defined by having 5 of these 9 symptoms and having them almost all day, every day for at least 2 weeks.
I was going to say, because some of the symptoms that you're describing are things that we all have experienced or seen loved ones experience. When does it become a concern?
Well, it becomes a concern when you've got more than just 1 or 2 of the symptoms, for one thing. And it especially becomes a concern if it alters your ability to take care of yourself, or if you're taking care of someone else, if it changes their ability to take care of themselves. Or if there are a lot of thoughts about suicide, that's obviously a concern. But clinically, major depression is defined as having at least 5 of these. And it always has to include either sadness or this lack of enjoyment in things that you used to enjoy doing. So that's major depression, and that can last for months. It has to last for at least 2 weeks, but it can last for months, and it can recur. Then a lesser form of depression is called dysthymia, and for that you only need to have a few of the symptoms, but you need to have them almost every day for 2 years. So this is the person that you see that is able to go to work, say, and have an otherwise normal life, but they just always seem to be low. They always seem to be, have a somewhat depressed mood. So those are the 2 different types.
And when dealing with older adults, do you see a difference in terms of either the types of depression or the symptoms that we might see in an older adult?
Well, the depression is pretty much the same for older people and for younger people. It can, the symptoms, some symptoms show up a little bit more often in older people. For example, the memory impairment and agitation and anxiety, somewhat more prevalent in older people. But otherwise, they're really pretty much the same. One thing that's interesting is that among older people who have major depression, half of them are having it for the first time in their lives, and the other half have had some depression earlier in their lives. So depression is actually the most prevalent late onset mental health issue.
So someone may not have had symptoms at all in their younger years and then develop it as they get older.
Exactly.
You had talked about one of the aspects of depression, or one of the symptoms, being sadness. What is the difference between grief and depression in terms of really being able to define a line between those two for someone?
Right, good question, because they can be mistaken for each other. Well, even if you're in a fairly intense period of grief or bereavement from a loss, you'll experience it somewhat like a roller coaster. So you'll have bad days, but you'll also have better days, and you'll have times when you still experience some joy, and you'll have moments where you might still be able to laugh at a good joke, for example. With depression, the sense of despair is constant. It just doesn't go away. So you're always in that lower mood state.
Okay, so one in which you really don't have any relief as you do when you're talking about a grief state or just sadness over changes that may be occurring as someone ages.
Right,
Okay.
right. And I mean, bereavement can turn into depression. If it's lasting, like a really long time, months and months, and the person begins to feel this pervasive sense of guilt, or have some of the other symptoms of depression that can come from bereavement, then that's of concern. I mean, that's a time to really look at it and realize that maybe this isn't just grief.
And when we talk about bereavement, we often think about it in terms of loss of loved one, but it could be from loss of other things too, correct? Loss of job, loss of your social connections, that type of thing as well.
Absolutely. Loss of a pet, even. Let's talk a little bit about the causes in general.
Okay.
So, so first of all, health issues are an important thing to consider, and this is one of the causes that especially affect older people, because as we get older, we tend to face more health issues. So chronic illness, especially if there's chronic pain, can lead to depression. And isolation and loneliness from living alone, from losing your social circle through deaths or through people relocating or you relocating and losing your social circle, becoming isolated because of losing the right to drive a car. So isolation and loneliness are causes, and causes that especially affect older people. Let me think for a second. Fear of dying, fear of death, fears of illness, fear of financial problems, of not having enough money. Let's see. Oh, that sense of worthlessness and the just a reduced sense of meaning in your life. For example, let's suppose someone's identity has been very connected to their job, and that they've had for many years, and then they retire, or because of a health issue, they're not able to work anymore. That can easily lead to a reduced sense of purpose and to these feelings of what's the meaning in my life now? How am I contributing? Let's see. Recent bereavement is another cause, and again, one that as we get older, we're going to see more and more of, which you mentioned earlier. A loss of a spouse or a loss of friends and family. And as I said earlier, loss of a pet.
Mm-hmm. And loss seems to be such a prevalent theme in terms of the aging process for people. Loss, as you said, of job, loss of loved ones, loss of potentially connections with the community, all of those types of things.
All of those things, yeah. Yeah, that's right. And going back to loneliness and isolation, there's that loss of your social circle that can have such a big impact on your feeling and how you feel about yourself. And a lot of older people are on medications, and a lot of medications have side effects that can either cause depression or make it worse. So it's really important if you're starting a new medication to try to be aware of how you're feeling and be aware of your mood. And if you begin to experience any symptoms of depression, that you go back to the person who's prescribing for you and let them know that, so that that can be taken care of.
Can changes in diet, nutritional issues as well, lead to concerns with depression or mask itself as depression?
I know that one thing that you want to do if you're finding yourself with these symptoms is you want to pay attention to nutrition. So I would imagine that the opposite would be true also. I know it does happen that as people become less mobile, they become less able to, especially if they're living alone, they become less able to provide adequate nutrition for themselves, and that's only going to exacerbate the symptoms. Right.
One of the interesting things that I know people deal with as well is the concern about the difference between depression and dementia, some form of dementia. And how do we tell the difference if we have a concern about someone as to whether they're dealing with depression or whether they're dealing with dementia, including maybe something like Alzheimer's, that type of thing?
Right. Good. Another good question. Yeah, they can be, again, mistaken for each other. Well, they do share some symptoms, but there are some differences, and I guess this is especially true if you're taking care of someone and you're concerned about that someone you're taking care of or that you care about might be experiencing depression. This is what to look for. With depression, the changes in cognitive ability, or the changes in the ability to think clearly and make good decisions, that tends to come on somewhat rapidly, say over the course of months rather than longer than that. Whereas dementia, the cognitive decline is more gradual. Okay, so that's one difference. A person experiencing depression will, if they're having some memory issues, they'll be aware of it and they'll be concerned about it. Whereas someone with dementia might not seem to even notice, those changes in themselves or to care. Mm-hmm. And then the changes in movement, like in depression, a person might be moving more slowly or speaking more slowly, but otherwise their movement and speech is normal. Whereas someone with dementia, the movement and speech is altered. I mean, it's really different than the way they spoke or moved before. So those are just a few differences to look for. I think if you're caring for someone or if you're experiencing those things yourself, it'd be best to get some professional help and get an assessment and really understand, what it is you're dealing with.
So that you can really be sure that you're dealing with depression as opposed to dementia or vice versa.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
If I'm an individual and I realize that as you're talking about this, that I can see that I'm having the symptoms of depression and it's something now that I'm concerned about. What are some of the things that someone should do? You said absolutely an evaluation is the first thing that they should do. Other things that someone can do to help themselves.
Right, to help. Yeah, that's right, to help yourself. Well, if you feel yourself experiencing these symptoms and are concerned about being depressed, there are a few really important things that you can do even before you go to see a professional, and those are to move your body, get outside, get a little exercise if you can, walk, pay attention to nutrition, make sure you're getting adequate nutrition. Diet and exercise, it's like the remedy for everything. So it is here as well. And go back and reconnect with your social circle, whatever that is, whether it's a group at a church or synagogue or mosque that you were involved in. Go back and reconnect with people, reconnect with family members. And you can do this before the symptoms become severe. As you notice yourself beginning to feel lower, you can pay attention to these things and help yourself quite a bit. There are a couple other causes I wanted to mention too. And that is, did I mention medication side effects? Right. Alcohol. So sometimes people, as they become depressed, want to start drinking more, and that's going to alcohol is a depressant, so that's going to exacerbate depression as well as you really don't want to mix alcohol with your other medications, with your prescription medications. Okay, so alcohol is an issue. And then another one is that at this time of year, we're in September here, the days are getting shorter and it's getting colder, and many people become fairly significantly depressed when it gets colder and darker. It's called seasonal affective disorder.
The loss of light.
Exactly,
Okay.
exactly. And there is treatment for that as well. So that's something else to be aware of as far as causes are concerned.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good to know, because it sounds like, at least from a standpoint of self-awareness, there are things that people can do to really help to, once they start to identify issues of depression in themselves, to help change that pattern.
Right,
with the
yes.
exercise, with things like even getting into the light, even getting into more daylight.
Even getting to more daylight, that's right. That's
Looking
right.
at their nutrition, looking at their medications, and determining and talking with their physician about how those medications may be affecting things for them.
Right.
How about if you are a caregiver for someone and you have concerns that that individual may be dealing with depression? Are there ways to be able to help get them onto a course of treatment and onto, hopefully, dealing with the depressive situation?
Absolutely. And as a caregiver, you're really looking for the same symptoms. So you're looking for the person to have slowed movement. You're looking for possible increased anxiety and agitation. You're looking for weight gain or loss, and sleep problems. And then yes, help that person reconnect with you and with the outside world. Help to make sure that they have adequate nutrition. Make a meal for them if you can. And then if you talk to them about how they're feeling, especially talk to them about if they're having any thoughts of hurting themselves or killing themselves. Speak to them about suicide in a very matter-of-fact way, without any judgment. We usually have the mistaken idea that if we talk to someone about suicide, that we're giving them the idea about it, and that's not really the case. Most people who are having those thoughts will welcome that question and will give you honest answers about how they're feeling, and that way you can know whether or not it's really time to get professional help.
And Michael, when is it time to get professional help? When would be the reason to get someone to see someone like yourself?
Well, if you are yourself feeling more and more depressed and feeling less and less able to take care of yourself, and noticing your social isolation, then it would be great to get some help. I would say talk first of all to your primary care physician, and then also try to find someone to talk to. Try to find a professional psychotherapist to talk to about your feelings and about what's happening for you. And then if you're taking care of someone else, if they get to the point, if you see them getting to the point where they can't take care of themselves anymore, that's time. Or if you know that they're having some thoughts of hurting themselves, that's obviously a time.
Definite time for professional intervention.
Absolutely.
Well, Michael, I want to thank you very much for providing us with this information today. And we'd also like to let our viewers know that we'll put a resource list up on the screen as well, so people know where to reach out for additional help. Michael, if people would like to contact you, where would they be able to reach you?
They can contact me at my office at Concord Insight Partners in Concord. The phone number is 978-369-1013, or at michael@concordinsight.com.
Fantastic. Michael, thank you very much again. I'd like to also take this opportunity to thank our production crew today, Jordan Daisy, who is our director, and Ed Pasquarosa, who is our floor director. Thank you all very much.